welcome to tonight's episode of your enlightening family law talk show, Late Night Intercourse. Your host, as always, is Chioma Onyenucheya Uko, also known as the Zest Family Lawyer. Of course, you know that the Late Night Intercourse is that family law conversation show where we discuss issues that affect family relationships, marriages, all of the domestic relationships, whatever they may be. We look at the legal implications of these issues. Socio-legal, yes, that's what we try to do at every episode of the Late Night Intercourse. And tonight, we will be looking at the topic of whether a woman can retain her marital name after a divorce. Sometime last month, I think it was, social media, as usual, was buzzing with a conversation. And it was around the issue of whether a one-time minister in Nigeria, a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, whether she could retain her marital name after divorce. Her husband has approached the court, we learned, to ask that she discontinue the use of his name, alleging that it could, bring him embarrassment because of some of the criminal prosecutions she was undergoing and the rest of such allegations. And then people were going on back and forth. Could she do that? Why would she do that? If a divorce has happened between parties, why should the woman continue to use the name of the man? And such other, questions. So today, what I've decided to do is to enable us an opportunity to discuss this and learn what the law says, what the position of the law is on the subject, and some of the reasons why a woman may need or want to retain her marital name even after she has said she no longer wants to be one with the man she was married to. And for us to do that, of course, you're already joining us on your favorite People's 105.5 FM Abuja, and you can also join us across our social media platforms where we are streaming live, and it's always a pleasure to have you join us in the conversation. It is an intercourse, which means that it's not just a one-sided affair. Yes, I initiate the conversation, and after the conversation is started, I'll be happy to have you call in with your questions, with your comments, whatever observations you may have. I'll be more than excited to have you share with us. Some of you may have experiences you'd like to share with others, or just get some sort of opinion on whatever it is. Please feel free to share, to call in at the appropriate time. Feel free to share your thoughts with us. We'll be happy so that it truly becomes an intercourse. So, we have said the topic is, can a woman retain her marital name after a divorce has happened? Of course, you know that a divorce is a legal procedure that brings a termination, an end to a marriage relationship. Though I call it a legal procedure, sometimes it may not be necessarily by a pronouncement of court. Sometimes you have people who are married under native law and custom just get divorced privately within the families without having to approach court. It could be a privately arranged procedure, but mostly it's a legal procedure that happens in court. And of course, whether it's a customary marriage or a statutory marriage, it can still happen in court. And when a court makes that finding that marriage has broken down irretrievably and agrees with the parties or one of the parties that the marriage should be dissolved, the pronouncement of that dissolution is what is called a divorce. It is a final termination. So unlike other forms of separation that may happen between a married couple, a divorce is a final termination. And when this happens, we know that generally as a matter of practice, we see that when a woman gets married, she typically would adopt her husband's name or merge her maiden name and her husband's name. It is not a legal requirement. It is not a prescription of any law. Nobody is under any obligation of law to do that. But just by way of practice, it is the norm. And it is an acceptable norm. And this norm that has persevered over time, you now observe that when a woman has adopted her husband's name, when she assumes that name, she would also necessarily make publications and make documentary adjustments that will reflect her new status, her new name. You know how a name is integral to a person's identity. A name is in fact, there is almost no identity without a name, So because of that, when a woman adopts, when she assumes her husband's name after marriage, she will make a publication in a national daily. She will, depose to an affidavit, and all of those necessary things will come to that will reflect and notify the public that she has changed her name, so that subsequent documentations in her new name will be, well received. They will be legal. They will be satisfactory of who she is. It will be a reflection of her true identity. After this has happened, and this woman, begins to bear this new name, and maybe unfortunately down the line, a divorce happens. There are expectations in some quarters that such a woman should drop the name she has adopted, that she should revert to her maiden name. She should go back to the maiden name she had before marriage. And, that conversation has been back and forth. Does the law make any such requirement? Is there any provision of law that mandates a woman to desist from bearing her marital name after a divorce has been pronounced between parties? There is no such law. There is no prescription of law to that effect. In fact, anybody, whether married or otherwise, anybody can assume any name they choose. Anybody can bear any name. So long as in bearing that name, it is not intended for criminal purposes. Example, maybe defrauding people or giving a fraudulent impression that you are who you are not. So long as there is no criminality in the use of that name, anybody can assume any name they choose, including a married woman. And upon assumption of that name, so long as she complies, whoever it is, complies with the legal requirements of a change of name, a formal change of name, that person is entitled to the use of that name, so long as, like I said, it is not intended for any criminal purpose. Now, imagine a situation where a woman has borne a name for a long time due to marriage, and in most cases, that marriage already has children, and her children also bear the same name. The question now is, why would she want to retain that name after she's no longer interested in being with that man, or after a divorce has been pronounced, whether at the man's prompting or at hers? And some of the reasons we found over time as to why women choose to retain their marital name include something that may seem really vain. She may just like the name. There are some names that have a really nice ring to them. You will agree with me. It's possible that before marriage, her maiden name was something she didn't really like, because oftentimes we don't have a choice as to what our names are. Names are usually ascribed at birth by our parents, or by guardians or whoever it is that has the rights to perform that role. And we just grow up and begin to answer whatever name that's been given to us at birth. Rarely do people bother to change their name except for compelling reasons, one of which is marriage. Of course, there are other reasons. Sometimes maybe due to a change of faith, a change of religion, somebody may decide that they no longer want to answer a name that reflects or represents the religion they have denounced. There are many more reasons why people may just choose to change their names, but it's not a frequent occurrence except in the usual instance of marriage. And the person may just really come to like their marital name as against their maiden name. And just because they love the name, they want to retain it. And whether you agree with that love or not, it is a valid reason. It is a right they are entitled to. They can keep that name if they want to keep it. Again, I repeat, so long as it is not intended to defraud, it is not intended for any criminal purpose. They are not retaining that name to use it, to gain themselves an undue benefit with a wrong representation that they are married to the original bearer of that name, or the person who donated that, or from whom they derived the name from. So long as none of that is intended, they can keep that name just because they like it. And then the other reason could just be that she wants to share a last name with her children. And that's quite common. After, there are children in a marriage, and those children bear the marital name. They bear the name of their father. And the woman already bears the same name. Even at the severance of that marriage, at the termination of that marriage, she may want to maintain identity with her children. She may want to maintain, that visible kinship with her children beyond just the bond of maternal relationship with them. She may want it known, pronounced, because these things are things that reflect on documents, whether it's in their birth certificates, in their travel passports, in their different registrations and all of those. And particularly for cases of maybe travel documents, some people don't like the embarrassment of having to explain why their name is at variance with the names of their children and things like that. So because of that, they may just want to bear the same name with their children. And that's also a very valid reason. And then it's possible that maybe this person it's in a profession, has a career, has built a business, something, and that's the name by which she has gone for some time. And she wants to maintain that name for those reasons. She does not want to go through the rigors, the troubles of having to modify or amend or correct her documents by changing names and all of those. And you know that when it comes to a change of name, it is not just enough. By the pronouncement of the Supreme Court, it is no longer just enough for you to depose to an affidavit of change of name or make a publication in a national daily saying you formerly XYZ has chosen to become ABC. Those are no longer just enough. By the provision of the Supreme Court, there is more required. And after this short break, I will bring that to you. Please stay tuned.
The roots of the issues that affect our